Coming to you from the desolate ice planet Hoth. Not just because snow reminds half the world of Christmas, but because it's actually related to what we're going to look at in this episode of SciFi MineCart. Now I do warn you, this is a slightly unusual episode of SciFi MineCart. Not just because it's a Christmas special, but because for once we're going to look at a movie that's not any good. Today, in SciFi MineCart, we're going to have a look at the infamous Star Wars Holiday Special.
The Star Wars Holiday Special.
First airing in 1978, the Star Wars Holiday Special quickly claimed and continues to hold to this day the title of worst thing on television ever. The Holiday Special is so far from good that it's almost mind-boggling, and yet still manages to fall short of being so bad it's good. The special runs for 97 minutes, although to its credit, it feels like much longer than that. But enough of this, let's explore what's exactly wrong with the Star Wars Holiday Special. Well, firstly, it opens up with Han Solo and Chewbacca trying to escape the Empire to get back to Kashyyyk for Life Day. This start is actually not so bad. It gets your hopes up for the special a little bit, which is probably to the detriment of the special itself because your hopes fall so very fast. Either way, at the start and throughout the special, we get occasional cutbacks to Han and Chewie trying to get back to Kashyyyk. These are, aside from the cartoon, the only two interesting and enjoyable parts of the special. It is, obviously, as you can probably tell, made through recutting footage from Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and the only new footage filmed for these segments are Han and Chewie talking. This is perhaps forgivable. I mean, obviously they didn't have the budget or the time, or, I mean, it's not really necessary for a TV special, to film all those extra special effects for just a holiday special. And since this came out in 1978, most people, aside from the die-hard fans, would have probably only seen Star Wars once or twice in the cinema, so it's not likely that the footage would have been too recognizable for it to be jarring or distracting. I had no real problem with this start bit, and it was after it that it went downhill. And perhaps the harbinger of these bad tidings is the opening credits, which is the most 70s thing I've ever seen, where it has a voiceover introducing the actors and their characters, while they all turn towards the screen to smile as if it's some sort of old 70s sitcom. This is where I got a little bit worried. And once the credits are finished, we begin our journey most bizarre. We are introduced to Chewbacca's family, who are, of course, also Wookiees. What's wrong with that, Grim, you may say? Have you got something wrong with Wookiees? Are you a speciesist? No, I swear I'm not. My best friend's a Wookiee. What my actual issue with this is that it's 9 minutes long of Wookiees talking to each other in Wookiee, or whatever the Wookiee language is, with no goddamn subtitles.
This scene goes on and on and on like this. I'm not even kidding!
So you're literally spending 9 minutes listening to Wookiees grunt at each other with no context except for your imagination. Also, some of Chewie's family members' names are a little bit weird. For instance, you have Itchy and Lumpy, which might not sound too out of place because we have Chewie, but Chewie is short for Chewbacca. Is Itchy short for Itchbucker and Lumpy short for Lumpbucker? It just sounds bizarre. Poor Lumpy probably gets teased to hell in Wookiee primary school. Anyway, aside from them speaking a language that no one actually speaks because it's not even actually a language, I mean, it's not like Klingon where some people have actually learnt the language. Literally no one speaks Wookiee because it's not a fleshed out language. But I digress. Aside from that, the scene itself is also still very slow. There's no action going on. It's just a bunch of Wookiees doing, hashtag just Wookiee stuff. The kid Lumpy does watch a circus act on a hologram machine halfway through the scene, but we've got our expectation up for spaceships and literally space wizards with laser swords and junk. So seeing a couple of people do ordinary people circus acts on a hologram machine just isn't that amazing. And I know it wasn't invented yet, but I would rather see him watching pod racing in this scene. That's right, I enjoyed pod racing, so sue me. Finally though, we get to actually see Luke Skywalker on the screen. The great Mark Hamill appearing for about 2 minutes, which is pretty much his entire role in this entire holiday special. Can you blame him though for not wanting to be in more of it? He's introduced because Marla calls up Luke to ask where Chewie is because he's not come home yet. Later on she makes the same call to Leia, resulting in another segment of about the same length. Both of these segments are really bizarre for an entirely different reason than the rest of the holiday special. Neither Luke nor Leia at any point in any of the movies or in this special ever give any sort of indication that they can actually understand or speak Wookiee. And in both of the segments, Leia and Luke both clearly show that they don't know what they're talking about and are also just trying to interpret it, much like the audience in the first 9 minutes of the special.
Oh, R2, look. It's Chewbacca's family. Here, keep working on it. Hello, Mala. Did she? Hi, Lumpy. Where's Chewbacca?
It gets even weirder though, because both Luke and Leia ask to speak to Chewie.
What's up? It's Chewbacca. Yeah, we'll bring him to the screen. I want to say hello to him. You don't know where he is? Oh, he's not there yet. Is that it? Oh, boy.
She says it may be a happy life day for you, but personally, she's seen happier ones.
I don't want to tire the channels. So could you do me a favor and send either Chewbacca or Han Solo to the screen, please?
They don't understand what the family's saying because they're speaking Wookiee. Chewie only speaks Wookiee, so why do they think they're going to understand it any further if they just hear Wookiee coming from a different Wookiee? On the bright side, from these two bizarre segments, we do get to see Mark Hamill channeling the Joker long before he actually became the Joker.
Come on, Mala. Let's see a little smile.
Bah, humbug.
We then get introduced to another brand new character. This trader guy who I didn't take the time to remember his name because he's just really not worth it. This is the first of several segments that I think are supposed to be comical, although they forgot to put in any jokes or humour, which is a bizarre way to go when trying to write comedy. In this scene we have someone who is supposedly an Imperial Guard.
Hang on, isn't that the Imperial uniforms worn by the technicians on the Death Star? What's he doing on Kashyyyk? Why is he not working on the Death Star? Oh, right. I guess he had to find a different job.
The second of these segments is parodying an old cooking show, which I've not seen because I don't watch cooking shows, because I don't like cooking shows, because they're not sci-fi. I found this scene entirely devoid of any humour, and it just felt like I was watching Marla, Chewie's wife, cooking dinner, which I suppose I was just watching Marla, Chewie's wife, cooking dinner. Although that said, as I said, I've not seen the cooking show they're parodying, so maybe I just don't get the joke. Also this.
Hello.
Let's hear that again. I don't really have words for that. Let's just move on. Following this, much to the joy of everyone watching the holiday special, the much beloved trader comes back. In a confusing display of the traditions of Life Day, the trader comes and gives the entire family presents. This is confusing because I'm not really sure why he gives them presents. Is it because they're his friends, and on Life Day you exchange gifts? If that's the case, where's his gifts from the family? Or is it just a Life Day tradition that traders give you things for free? If that's the case, I can really get behind Life Day. It's just sort of weird seeing him play a sort of Santa Claus role after he's already established himself as a trader who, of course, would need to make ends meet. Although I think at this point I'm probably thinking about it far more than the writers ever did, so let's move on. He gives Lumpy what sort of looks like a very pimped out Magnavox Odyssey 2. To Marla he gives a hologram machine, I guess he didn't know that she already had one that we saw earlier in this episode. And to Itchy he gives some virtual reality pornography. This probably leads to the most infamous scene from the Star Wars Holiday Special. And yes, I know it's not actually pornography, you never actually see nudity in it, but seriously, the dialogue, the way it's presented, and the way that Chewie's father reacts to what he's seeing, heavily implies that it is pornography.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a, wow. You know what I mean?
The scene is super awkward, and well, it's sort of just watching a Wookiee watch porn in the living room of his house. I I honestly have no idea what they were thinking when they made this scene.
I suppose nothing says Christmas, Life Day, like having the Empire raid your house while your dad watches awkward porn in the living room.
Let's move on.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Sondan, a local trader, a friend of the rebellion, and a member of the Alliance.
Wait, what? The rebellion is the Alliance. It's called the Rebel Alliance. They're the same thing. It's just two different nicknames given to the same group of people. It would be like if Han Solo introduced himself by saying, "I'm the captain of the Millennium Falcon, and I also pilot the Falcon." I don't think the people that wrote this script had ever actually watched Star Wars, although I'm not sure if that makes this special more or less offensive. Anyway, so Darth Vader, who is not at all in the spirit of Life Day, that's right, they even dragged James L. Jones into this train wreck, orders every household on Kashyyyk to be searched for rebels, and Itchy stupidly lets the Empire into the house after they knock on the door. This was a really dumb move, because everyone knows that if you just lock the door, the Empire gives up and moves on after no one answers it.
Door's locked. Move on to the next one.
Okay, it's Christmas. Let's try to scrounge some positives from this film. Well, firstly, Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk looks pretty good. It looks, in fact, quite a lot like Kashyyyk does in Episode 3. So they really managed to nail it, so much so that later on when they made the prequels, they decided to stick to the actual look of Kashyyyk from the holiday special. So that's pretty good. Even if it is just a color-corrected Yavin when we see it from space and from the sky, Kashyyyk does look pretty okay. And the second positive would have to be Jefferson's starship. That's right, the stormtroopers stopped searching the house for a while so they can watch the 1970s psychedelic rock band Jefferson's Starship. I'm pretty sure they're only in here because they've got Starship in their name, and it is quite disappointing they're not Jefferson Airplane, because everyone knows that they were better as Airplane than they were as Starship, but it is still Jefferson Starship, so that's a positive. And the fact that everyone does stop to watch Jefferson Starship when they come on the screen is probably the most accurate part of this entire holiday special, because I don't know about you, but if I was part of an evil empire searching for rebels in a treehouse, and I heard Jefferson Starship playing on the old hologram machine, I would definitely also stop to watch them. Anyway, back to the storyline. While the Empire is searching the house for any links to the Rebel Alliance, the child Wookiee Lumpy decides that now is the best time to watch Secret Rebel Logs. These Secret Rebel Logs is the cartoon section of the holiday special, which is generally agreed upon to be the best section of the holiday special, which isn't actually saying much because, as I've said, the holiday special is pretty bad, and the cartoon isn't without its weird flaws either. For instance, Luke has to go after the Millennium Falcon, which has gone rogue for some reason, and yet he decides to go after it in a Y-Wing rather than his X-Wing. So I guess his thought process was, there goes the fastest ship in the fleet, I'd better chase it with the slowest fighter I have available. The Y-Wing is just a bomber. It's literally the slowest fighter the rebels have. It's also interesting that when he crashes the Y-Wing into the ocean, it has a flotation device allowing the vehicle to stay above water. Do all rebel fighters have these flotation devices, and did Luke just forget about it in episode 5 when he really needed it? Or is it just the Y-Wings that have flotation devices? Do Y-Wings really need flotation devices more than X-Wings do? Well, evidently not. Speaking of which, while this is being recorded before episode 7 has been released, when it's uploaded I will have already seen episode 7, I did admittedly fib about broadcasting live from Hoth, but while this is being recorded before episode 7 is released, I do hope those fighters in the trailer have flotation devices, because they really need them by the looks of it. Anyway, aside from the flotation devices, the other notable thing from the cartoon is that it's also the first ever appearance of Boba Fett, which is pretty rad. So I'm not going to say that the cartoon's bad. In fact, it's probably the same level of quality as the Star Trek animated series. Back to the nonsensical live action section, we have an uncomfortably long infomercial of some sort, run by a malfunctioning android, which is sort of pointless because who is going to buy a machine from a machine that can't even keep itself running? There's not much to say about this section, aside from that it's terrible, and that I saw better quality comedy come out of school plays on camp in primary school. And then we have this weird section, which they've attempted to tie into the main story as propaganda by announcing it as this.
The following live broadcast is recommended by the Imperial Council in the belief that your commitment to remain upstanding citizens will be reinforced. It is required viewing for all members of the Imperial forces.
It literally makes no goddamn sense. Why would this be required viewing for all members of the Imperial forces? It's not even propaganda, it's just a weird bar scene, and the Imperial soldiers we see watching it seem to be just as confused as to why they're watching it as the viewer is. And then the show that the Imperial forces are being forced to watch is interrupted by an announcement that a curfew is being put in place. But then it cuts to the bar scene that they were watching on TV that got interrupted by the announcement of a curfew, and the bar scene is also being interrupted by this curfew. So it's extremely confusing as to what the bar scene exactly is. Is it a TV show that they're being forced to watch, or is it a live broadcast? And furthermore, was the curfew a real thing, or was it only part of the show? Because then in the bar scene, they all refuse to leave the bar, disobeying the Imperial order until they get another drink. So, if that's forced viewing for the Empire, why would they show people refusing to obey Imperial orders and go unpunished by it until they get another beer? That's just ridiculous. It's failed propaganda at its worst, and it's story writing at its worst. The viewer shouldn't be left confused by what they just watched. I literally have no idea whether this segment was supposed to be reality or not.
This segment makes no goddamn sense.
Once again though, I think I'm putting more thought in it than the writers ever did, so let's move on to the next terrible thing. All bar one of the Imperial soldiers leave, Han and Chewie show up, they kill the last Imperial soldier, or more if he kills himself. Have you ever buggered up so bad that you went to grab your gun but instead jumped off a balcony instead? He has. Anyway, Han and Chewie show up, and then a few seconds later, Han leaves, presumably because Harrison Ford had now met the minimal requirement his contract demanded, and he was hightailing it out of this farce as fast as he could, and we, the viewer, are greeted to more Wookiee grunts before the trader re-arrives. Then finally the Life Day celebrations start, which is super weird and seems to involve the Wookiees wearing red robes and walking into some sort of glowing light suspended in space. But who am I to judge? Christmas traditions are also super weird if you look at them objectively. The weird dimension they find themselves in during these Life Day celebrations, though, raises quite a few questions. First of all, how did they all get there? Do they all just have to undergo the orb ritual to get there? If so, why was it so important for Chewie to get home if all he had to do was hold an orb up and arrive in the Life Day dimension? And can anyone go there at any time? Luke and Leia weren't there for the orb ritual, and yet still managed to arrive in the weird tree dimension of the Life Day festival, and even the droids managed to make it there. Couldn't they have just stolen the Death Star plans in Episode 4, gone into the tree dimension, given it to the Rebel who also enters the tree dimension, and then both leave, so the Rebel now has the plan safe in the Rebel base? Is it just their minds that go into the tree dimension? Could Leia have escaped prison by simply slipping into the tree dimension? Is this the same dimension that Jedi are able to go to with their special training after death? And if so, why is Obi-Wan not there? Whatever. This special makes no freaking sense. So who do I suggest watch this special? Well, really only Star Wars fans that have a morbid curiosity, cause they're the only ones that are gonna really enjoy this. It's not good, but it is interesting to see how much went so very wrong. Past the fact that an overweight guy brought everyone presents, and that everyone, after holding glowing orbs, walked into the sun, this special doesn't actually have a great deal to do with Christmas. So why would I review it in a Christmas special, you ask? Good point. Whatever.
Overall, the Star Wars Holiday Special is a spectacular train wreck. It's not good, and it's not really fun to watch, but it is sort of intriguing in some sort of strange way. So, if you don't have much going on in your life, watch the Star Wars Holiday Special. Thanks for watching. I have been and still am Grim Grindle. Merry Christmas and see you next year.